He always did a great job. He always did a great job.
He has done a good job.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
Well, after you read those instructions, it sounds like we should pester the staff long before we hold this meeting.
These,
Yeah,
how about that?
yeah. Did you read it?
Yeah.
Should discuss everything with the staff before
Mhm.
we come to the meeting.
Yeah.
I don't like any of my surprises.
They don't. So is this because of you?
I hope not.
But it could be.
I can do that. Actually, we voted Laurie in as the, did we not?
Well, she's already the vice or the vice chair. Uh-huh.
Laura? Come here, I'll help you to your chair.
On you.
Well, you look official.
Feel it. I feel it. All right. Well, then with that, I will open the meeting at 6:31 PM on August 8th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call?
Yes. Angela, send it to you for roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Melcher,
I'm here.
Commissioner Wolthius,
Here,
Commissioner Wood,
Here.
Commissioner Gray,
Present.
Commissioner White, and Commissioner Graybill.
Now I'm here.
There we go. Okay, we have 6 present and no absent. And we now have another position open, so keep that in mind.
Um, where am I? I'm sorry. You'll have to help me through. This is my first time running a meeting, so what's next?
So you should have the agenda.
Angela was gonna read this. Oh, loud.
Perfect. Thank you. All right.
Bring up your one.
Well, our first business is the election of a new chairman.
I would nominate Laura Wood as chair.
I second.
Nominating Laura, she's vice right now, correct? So we will also need to vote a vice in then.
I nominate Jamie Melcher. I second.
Okay, so we have election and a second for both the chairman and vice chair. All those in favor of electing Laura Wood as the chairman of the planning commission, say aye.
Aye.
And in favor, nay. All right, well then, all aye, none abstain. And Laura is the due, that's me, I'm the new chairman. Yes, so now we need to elect the vice chair. We've had put forth the name of Jamie Melcher and a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Then Jamie Melcher has been elected as vice chairman. There you go, Jamie, it's official. All right, now we're going to our meeting minutes from, a long time ago, March 21st, 2024. We're going to be approving the minutes. Do the commissioners have any changes?
I would move to approve the planning commission meeting minutes of March 21st, 2024 as presented.
We have,
Second it.
we have a move and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any abstain? The meeting minutes are approved. Thank you. Yes. This is an opportunity now for the members of the public to address the planning commission on any topics that are not listed on the agenda.
So really quick, I'm going to read our speaker conduct. We haven't had a meeting for a long time, so I'm going to go ahead. This is also for public comment during the applications also. So both for this comment period and for the applications, that way I don't have to read it again. So speaker conduct, citizens acknowledged by the chairperson to address the council or committee shall step up to the microphone, give his or her name, address, subject matter of their comments in an audible tone, a voice for the record, and unless further time is granted by the chairperson, shall limit their address to 3 minutes. All comments should be made to the entire council or committee and not to any single member or to staff. Any questions for council members or staff shall be presented through the chairperson. The council will determine the disposition of any issues raised, placed on the agenda designated for work session. Future agendas refer to staff or do not consider. So just wanted a reminder of how that works.
Thank you, Angela.
Mhm.
Is there any other public comment on topics that aren't listed on the agenda? All right, with that, we will move on and open the public hearing for, we're doing the variance first. VR 24-01 at, do I need to do the time as well?
Yep.
At 6:35.
And you want to read this, I think.
Oh, yes, thank you. So, before we go, I want our commissioners to make their declarations that they have no personal bias. Thank you.
No.
What am I? I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Yes, I do. So the applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation, which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Now we have our declarations by the commission. Do any of the commissioners have any personal bias regarding this application?
No.
No,
No.
No. Any conflicts of interest?
no,
No.
No.
No. Any ex parte information?
No.
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 I have none. All right, with that, I will send it to Angela for the staff report.
Before I start on the staff report, we received 3 comment cards. I was waiting till you all elected. And so when it comes to that time for public comment, you'll get to call them up. They wanted for both applications.
Okay.
Welcome back. All right, this is an application for variance application BR 2401. The applicant is seeking a variance to allow lot width to be measured from the property lines as opposed to an easement boundary for lots 21 through 29, and to allow 31%, for example, 9 lots as opposed to 10% of lots within the proposed subdivision to be assessed by private access easement. Lot depth and width where required by underlying zone, the lot width shall be measured along the easement boundary, and the lot depth shall be measured from the easement boundary to the rear lot line. Per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.42.120C, no more than 10% of the lots within a subdivision may be accessed by a private street or private access easement. per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.58030C3. The subject property is zoned residential low density R1 and the comprehensive plan designation is low density residential R1. As another note, subdivision application SD 24-01 is reliant on the approval of application VR 2401. And as a note, I won't be reading the applicant's comments. Their summary was provided in your planning commission packets and online for review, and the applicant is here in attendance to answer any questions. Based on the review of the FEMA flood insurance map, panel 41043C0914G dated September 29th, 2010, the subject properties are not in the special flood hazard area. The subject property does not show local wetlands and waterways on the property. Per the Department of State Land, the applicant requested an offsite determination in 2020, WD 2020-0035. We sent a copy of the response to our office. The determination recommended a wetland delineation be completed and submitted to the department for review. The subject property has access from Foothills Drive and 23rd Avenue. Lots 12 through 20 shall be accessed via access and utility easements. City water and sewer are available at 23rd Avenue and Foothills Drive. Foothills Drive is proposed to extend from 23rd Avenue to 27th Avenue. The fire district had some concerns with access to the housing division. 23rd Avenue is a narrow, not developed, and would typically be accessed for fire and EMS because of its location in relation to the proposed project. If something is typical, making an exception creates risk and inconsistency. In emergency services, we understand that on a map, a firefighter looks at the small street and believes it the shortest, fastest route, which can matter in a life-saving event. Foothills Drive, going from 60 feet in width to 50 feet, creates another inconsistency that will be a transition. A driver and responding apparatus will deal with the road narrowing suddenly, which makes no sense in any way that this would be acceptable by design. At every exit or entrance, turning radius will be done by a 40-foot ladder. Access point caused apparatus to slow or even jockey to make a turn. Parking will be an issue and fire lanes will need to be posted into flag lot type drives. This design is a concern, but I'm sure there's resolutions. And to note to that, so staff was unable to get comments from the fire district for this application. However, staff maintains the concerns of the fire district from the previous subdivision proposal. So this was not given to us on this application from the fire department. Some of the concerns of the fire department were addressed and were not added to this application. So I just want to be clear with that. And then the rest of the street staff will address the street summary further in the subdivision staff report. A variance is necessary because the subject development code provision does not account for special or unique physical circumstances of the subject site, existing development patterns, or adjacent land uses. A legal lot determination may be sufficient evidence of hardship for purposes of approving a variance. In staff findings, lot depth and width were required. Where required by the underlying zone, the lot width shall be measured along the easement boundary and lot depth shall be measured from the easement boundary to the rear lot line per 1742120C. No more than 10% of the lots within a subdivision may be accessed by a private street or private access easement per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.58030C3. 10% of the lots proposed in the subdivision application is approximately 3 lots. Approval of the subdivision application SD 24-01 is contingent of the approval of the variance proposed in this application. Such variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right of the applicant possessed by the owners of the properties in the same vicinity or district. An economic hardship shall not be the basis for a variance request. Staff finds that the subject property abuts similar size and shape residential properties in the R1 zone to the east throughout the residential properties to the north and west. See attachment A. Staff finds that the proposed variance shall allow the applicant to preserve and enjoy the property rights the same as the owners of other R1 zone properties in the vicinity. The authorization of such variance will not be material or detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property in the vicinity or district in which the property is located or otherwise conflicts with the objective of a city plan or policy. Staff finds that the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property in the vicinity or district in which the property is located. The variance does not conflict with the objectives of any city plan or policy. The need for a variance is not self-imposed by the applicant or property owner. For example, the variance request does not arise as a result of a property line adjustment or land division approval previously granted by the applicant. Staff findings: subdivision SD 21-01 approved July 19, 2021. Complied with the development standards at the time of approval. Application SD 21-01 was granted an extension for recording the final plat. However, the final plat was never recorded at the county, requiring a new application to be submitted. The current property owner chose to redesign the original application to reflect current development code standards that were approved and implemented on September 27, 2022, allowing for 7,000 square foot lot sizes as opposed to the previous requirement of 8,000 square foot lots in the R1 zone. The proposed lot sizes would range in size from 7,206 square feet to 8,626 square feet, complying with the current development codes. The previously approved applications SD 21-01 also contained 4 access and utility easements through 8 lots south of Foothills Drive to the rear lots abutting the vacant property to the south. Staff finds that the applicant's choice to reduce the lot sizes, therefore reducing the buildable lot width, is self-imposed by the applicant. The minimum lot width at the building line is 70 feet per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.10.060A. If the applicant were to face the residential dwellings at the time of development toward Foothills Drive, the building lines for lots 21 through 29 would be under the required 70 feet. However, the residential dwellings could face easements east or west on lots 21 through 29 and have building lines that are greater than the required 70 feet. I'm going to pause here for a second to explain. So front of building line and front of lot are 2 different things. The front of lot is, if you see how it's the rectangle shaped, the front would be up toward Foothills. The front building line is the building line that the house faces. So they can be different. They don't necessarily line up with the front lot line. So just there's 2 definitions there, and I just want to make sure you guys are clear of what that means. Staff finds that the applicant is retaining the easements from the previous approved application SD 21-01 and therefore is not self-imposing a change to the previously granted application. The variance requested is the minimum variance, which would alleviate the identified hardship. Staff finds that the requested variance are the minimum allowed for what the applicant is requesting. All applicable building code requirements and engineering design requirements shall be met. Staff finds that no development is being proposed with this application. Staff recommends a condition of approval that all building code requirements and engineering design standards be met at the time of development. Staff recommendation: staff finds that the applicant has requested the minimum variance necessary to alleviate the hardships presented by the applicant. Staff has recommended conditions of approval listed below. Conclusions: the application shall be subject to the compliance with the conditions listed below as required by the findings of fact presented in the review criteria of Section 3 above. Any modifications to the conditions listed below would require approval in accordance with provisions of law. For example, variance, subsequent land use application, etc. Conditions of approval: 1, any future development shall comply with the City of Sweet Home Building Code requirement, engineering design standards, and development standards of Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.10.070. Planning Commission action: the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. If the application is denied, the action must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. Appeal period: staff recommends that the Planning Commission's decision on the matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date of the decision is mailed. Order: after the Planning Commission makes a decision, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order shall memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval if the application is approved. Motion: after opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission's options include the following. Move to approve application VR 24-01 and thereby permit the variances for the subject lot located in Sweet Home, Oregon 97386, identified on the Lynn County Assessor's Map as 13S01E 32CA, tax lot 04403, adopting the findings of fact listed in Section 3 of the staff report, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Move to deny application VR 24-01 and thereby deny the request for variance for the subject lot located at Sweet Home, Oregon 97386, identified on Lynn County Assessor's Map as 13S01E32CA, tax lot 04403, adopting the findings of fact the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Move to continue the public hearing to a date and time or other. I'd also like to state that when these variance application, there's 2 different requests in this application. You can consider them. You can make amendments to them if you choose. You can also vote on one and not the other. So just keep that in mind that you do have the ability to change the conditions or vote on how those variances are applied. I don't even think. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've had to talk to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm out of practice.
All right. With that, we'll move to the applicant's testimony. Will the applicant please come forward? And if you'll state your name and address.
Good evening. Is this on? Okay. My name is Laura LaRock with Udell Engineering. I'm the applicant's representative. So thank you for hearing our application proposal this evening. So as Angela already presented, there's 2 variance requests that are presented to you tonight in association with a subdivision application that will be reviewed next. So those requests, just put simply, is that the city has a standard and it says a lot width has to be a certain distance. In this case, if there is an easement, so an area that is determined unbuildable for either access or utilities, then the city's code currently states that the dimension is measured from the edge of easement opposed to property lines. So in this case, the lots themselves meet the minimum width standard that's set by the Sweet Home Development Code. Because some of the lots have proposed access and utility easements have crossed some of the side property lines, the width is decreased. However, the width that is remaining is often over 50 feet wide, which is more than sufficient for a number of different housing types and styles. I'll also point out where the area where the easements are located is along a side property line. This portion of the property would not typically be constructed upon anyhow because there's required setbacks or distances that buildings have to be placed. So the overall effect by approval of this variance, the lots themselves would not look any different than any other standard subdivision in the city. The house placement would also look very similar in design and also placement. The second requested easement before you tonight, or variance, excuse me, is to allow a number of flag lots that exceeds the development code. So previously, the standard did not exist. In the most recent code amendment, standard was put in place to allow only 10% of lots created in a subdivision to be accessed by a flag. What that means is they don't have wide street frontage. They have a narrow strip, often just a driveway that connects to a public street. The reason the variance request is put before you is because a public road to provide access to the lots number 12 through 20 is not proposed in this area due to topography. So behind lots 12 to 20 is some slope and topography that would not be adequate to construct a public street. So really the creation of these lots, the only means to access to a public street is through a flag stem access easement to the public street. 10% of the lots is 3 lots. What's proposed is 9, so the standard is exceeded by just 6 lots. The reason for limiting or putting this code in place altogether is often just to preserve the ability for on-street parking to occur. So by adding flag stems and additional driveways, sometimes that impacts the number of cars that can park along a public street. In this case, in the subdivision packet and exhibit, it shows that there is adequate on-street parking still preserved just through the design of the subdivisions. So how the driveways are all placed, it allows cars to park in between driveways and flag accesses for a number of parking spaces to still be retained on the street. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and answer any questions that the commission might have.
So my question, so with a variance, for us to be able to approve variance, one of the stipulations is that it can't be self-imposed. So when a lot is being developed and then a variance comes in front of us, my question is, I can see how the topography might be imposed by the land itself, but what is it about the land that requires the variances of these additional flag lots that would run perhaps through the center of the community, connecting the bulk of the community together?
So I think what I hear you're asking is kind of the issue or the reason behind the request. Is that a good way to
Right,
sum? Okay.
right. Why is it the land or is it the plan that is
Yeah.
causing the need for the flag?
Yeah, so in designing subdivision, there's usually multiple different ways that lots can be created. In this instance, we look to the city's guiding documents like the comprehensive plan, needs for housing in the community. This particular area of the community is set aside to develop lots of a certain size. The lots created and drawn in the subdivision do fulfill that need, which then can be built upon with housing to provide needed housing for the community members. Any alteration to this would result in inefficient use of land area and a decrease in kind of the housing stock that the city can have available to folks wanting to move and live within the community. So I guess the long-winded answer to say that other design options were reviewed and considered, this was the most efficient use of land by still on balance preserved all the code requirements in terms of design and siting.
Based on topography, but is there any potential development south of this property?
And I'm not aware of any.
Anybody else have any questions for our applicant?
So for the 20 lots that are proposed, how many on-street parking spots would be available with this design?
Yeah, I believe I have that count, and I think what we're preserving is 16. I might have to just double check my numbers on that.
Okay.
On the subdivision presentation, I'll have an answer
And
to
is
that
there
question.
parking on one side or both sides?
Both sides of the street?
Okay. Have you spoken to the fire district about their concerns?
The access and circulation really come up under the subdivision review, and there are design considerations that are made with the subdivision application that do address and alleviate some of those concerns.
Okay.
In terms of the comments about providing access to the future development on lot 12 through 20, those access widths, the driveways, the shared access ways, there'll be no parking within those areas, which allows for fire apparatuses to access those rear lots. And there'll also be some distance requirement and fire code provisions, but they'll all be able to be met through the building design permitting process.
So Laura, I just have a question about the parking as well, because there are houses on both sides of the street. Typically, there's 2 cars per house. And off-street parking is required. We know that. And then there's usually insufficient parking for the number of cars that go with a development of this size or larger. And then I guess my other concern is about the shared driveway easement, that there's no parking along there. I understand that. So anybody who visits any of those 4 houses that share the easement would have to park on the street.
So
That's the question.
Yeah. So to answer those questions, each of the lots will accommodate off-street parking. So each of the lots being created will be able to accommodate at least 2 vehicles, if not more,
Right.
within a driveway or garage or carport in those areas. The lots 12 through 20 that will be, they'll also have the ability to have off-street parking within a driveway, within a carport or a garage located those. These lots, lots 12 through 20, they also are oversized from a standard lot. So the minimum lot size is 7,000 square feet. And you can see from the map, they range from about 8,200 to, I think the largest one there is about 8,006, right around there. So there'll be more than enough area to set the house back and have parking be accommodated outside those shared access ways.
Yeah, because they're not impacted by the easement.
Mhm.
Those lots are.
Yeah.
And so those lots are nice and level back there so that there's plenty of space for the building footprint plus parking and yard back
Yeah,
there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, there's plenty of area to do the grading and
Okay.
have sufficient area for parking and building construction.
There have previously been two concerns, some from the fire department and others expressed here, but the retention, storm retention area, I know that on our previous meeting, there was some discussion about making that turn with a fire truck. And it seems to me like it'd be certainly within your capacity to round that corner off.
Laura, if I may, and Chair, if I may. So just as a reminder, we will be listening to the subdivision application after this. So this application is just for the variance to allow the lot widths to be measured from the property lines, and then also for the 31% of the lots to be accessed by easement. So keep that in mind. We need to vote on those separately. So this application is just for the variance, and then we will discuss the actual subdivision portion of it in the next one.
So even though we've got a lot of the architectural work, that is still going to happen in the future.
That's the next motion, the next
Next public hearing.
public hearing that will open after the variance.
There's two applications. They're tied together, but decisions on each of them will be separate.
So the
And-
first is the variance, the second is approving the subdivision.
Yeah, and answers to questions about turning radiuses for fire apparatus will be answered during the next meeting or during the next hearing, which will take place right after this.
Okay. I'll save any other comments until we get to the second issue.
Hi.
Good evening.
Hi, will you please state your name and address?
I'm Brian Vendetta, Udell Engineering and Land Surveying as well. So also the owner applicants in the audience, and we were visiting with one of your concerns, and I wanted to elaborate on what he's planning to do on the lots. So his plan is to build every one of the lots with double car garages and an RV pad on the side. And then there'll be 2 parking spaces in front of that double car garage. So effectively, every lot as built out would have 4 off-street parking spaces, and then also an RV pad that could accommodate a vehicle to park in front of the RV when it's parked back alongside the house as well.
Questions for our applicant? Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
All right, with that, we're going to move to any proponent testimony from people wishing to speak in favor of the application. All right, we'll move on to opponent's testimony from those wishing to speak in opposition to the application. And I do have your public comment cards. So if you don't mind, I'll just call you up one at a time. I have, it looks like Gail Hein. Hi, Gail. Please have a seat and state your name and address.
Gail Heine, 2331 Harding Street.
Thank you, Gail, for coming. I just want to remind you, please keep your comment to 3 minutes and also talking specifically about the variance
Will
issue.
do my best.
Thank you so much.
I moved to my house in 2003. I was told that the end of Harding Street and behind the house was all wetlands. Soon after I moved in, Harding Street was opened up and houses were built. The 6.5 acres behind me were left as is. The new houses now need sump pumps in the winter because they are built on a wetland. There is a hill on the other side of the 6.5 acres. Water runs downhill. The back of my property has a wetland drainage, which is full in the winter, has little waterfalls coming in. I have walked that acreage in the winter with my dogs. It can get up to knee deep. If you put concrete slabs on all of that with houses on top of it, my house will flood. Twice since I have lived there, since 2003, with no houses. I have an 18-inch concrete foundation. It has been halfway up, flooded twice since 2003. If you put a bunch of concrete slabs back there for the RV parking and everything else, I will get flooded, and the people across the street. This isn't, I don't know what they're going to do. This is wetlands. You cannot mess with Mother Nature. Water goes downhill. It's a big hill. Water comes down it. It sits in that area and it goes into the ditch at the back of my property. And for decades now, it's been going through Sweet Home. You can follow that ditch all kinds of places. You put all the cement slabs and stuff in there, you're going to end up with a lot of upset people and flooded property.
Thank you, Gail. We'll take that into consideration. Next, I have Gary Jarvis. Please state your name and address.
Yes, my name's Gary Jarvis. I live at 2941 Foothills Drive. What I'd like to do is I would prefer to defer my comments until the next portion of the public hearing because I can't speak intelligently enough to the variances being requested specifically for the property line, and that is not as much of my concern as other concerns. So if you will allow me,
call
I'll
you back
defer
up
to
then.
that part.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. All right, then I'll move on to Ron Walker. Thank you, Ron. Please state your name and address.
Ron Walker, 2631 Foothills Drive, property immediately adjacent to the proposed subdivision. Hadn't planned on speaking on the variance per se. Didn't realize they were going to be sorted out and separated as much. Do, however, have a lot of comments on the subdivision side of it. However, looking at this variance, they're asking to go from 3 lots to 9. My concern about that is you have tripled it. That's a pretty big ask to triple things up, go 200% more. That leads into access and egress issues, which this isn't the time to talk about those. I'll get them later. There's been some discussion about parking, which I didn't realize was going to be under the variance side, but if we have a Foothills Drive of 60 feet and we're proposing to go to Foothills Drive of 30 feet with parking on both sides of the street, I don't hardly see how you'd be able to drive down that street with cars on both sides. I could address that a little more under the subdivision side of things too, but I think the ask is just way too large. I feel that that's going to lead into some other problems, which I'll talk on later. And at this point, the proposal as it is right now, I have to oppose it. I can't go along with it.
Thank you,
You have
Ron.
any questions of me?
Not right now.
Good.
Thank you.
Chair Wood, if I may, one point of information.
Yes.
In some of the comments, and I just want to make sure we're clear. Foothills Drive currently has a 60-foot right-of-way. That is the whole right-of-way. That is not the paved surface. That is from the edge of the sidewalk to the other edge of the sidewalk. This proposed extension of Foothills would have a 50-foot right-of-way, so it is a 10-foot difference. That is all. And then adjacent to it, 23rd Avenue right now has a 40-foot right-of-way is what the city has, except that at the end near Harding, it narrows to 35 feet. And I'm talking with the property owner about getting that extra 5-foot strip as well. So just by way of information, wanted to make sure that was clear. And then also to help people understand the size of a 50-foot right-of-way, currently around the corner, 27th Avenue, between Foothills and Juniper, has a 50-foot right-of-way also. So it would be, if you're wondering what size street this would be, it would basically be the size of 27th Avenue.
Thank you, Blair. All right, I'd like to invite anybody who maybe did not fill out a comment card but signed in the back, who was an opponent and wanted to make opponent testimony, come forward. All right, then we'll move on to any neutral testimony. Anybody, any testimonies from those who are neither in favor or in opposition of the application? All right, then I'd like to invite the applicant back up for a rebuttal to that testimony. All right, and they have refused a rebuttal, so then I will close the hearing and open up discussion amongst the commission. Well, we recently updated our code, and we did it with purpose and intention to make sure that we were building for the future of Sweet Home. And so my concern with this, the flag lot variance, is that we chose that number specifically to protect our residents from being stuck in flag lots or from being in situations where they didn't have as much access as they needed, or there wasn't street parking where we needed it to be. So, and unfortunately, because there's nothing built, the flag lot variance, I feel, is completely plan imposed and isn't imposed by the property. That's my feeling on that. The other easement variance I see as property driven, more necessary. That's like fits to a variance request.
I would agree with that. And staff is proposing a different design, the way of facing the homes so that they wouldn't need to have that variance on there just by facing them towards the easement. Is that what I'm reading here?
So that's not for the flag lot portion of it.
Okay.
That's just for the measuring. So we have a front of building line width, and typically you would measure if you face the house. As the applicant stated, there are many different designs for houses, so it may not make a difference whatsoever. But typically we measure from lot line to lot line, and not from easement to lot line. So that one is not right here.
Not a hardship.
No, that one is just there is a setback there, so they wouldn't be able to build to it anyway, to where the easement, that's the flag poles, however, they cannot design a road that goes in the back. And so, which is why this was designed. This is the same design as it was approved before.
Okay.
There is one extra flag lot in there, which is the one on lot 21. That one is also needed because, and we'll discuss that in the subdivision, but that one's needed for a different reason besides just access. So it's not something totally imposed. This is something that was approved before. So
But
Sorry,
what
I'm not
that
being
was
articulate.
before we had this code in place.
Correct.
And we chose to put this code in place. We thought it was important to have that code in place just recently.
So, excuse me. I understand the request to lessen the lot size to 7,000 feet, which is what's in our code. I don't quite agree with the argument that the 10 feet that each property would be adding or contributing to the easement is potentially unusable property. I don't get that. I'm not against the lot size being reduced because it complies with our code. I get that. It's just the argument about the easement doesn't make sense. That's imposed by the property owner. So I'm conflicted about whether to approve the lot size because it complies. But again, the easement dimension is of concern. And then we've made a point over the years to kind of set a precedent. I know it's not in writing, but we do have several decisions where we have ruled against flag lots and that we see them as problematic for a future homeowner. I understand that the nature of this property with the elevation on the south side causes difficulty for the property owner. And of course, they want to develop that to the maximum. So herein lies the conflict of allowing them to use it to the best of their ability, yet within our, what our code says.
And keep in mind, you can decide on these. There are two different variances in there. So you can weigh them separately. So
One's the size of the lot.
well, one of them's measuring from easement to not the size of the lot. It's measuring from the easement to the lot line. And then the other one is the flag lot
The number of.
percentage.
One thing also to keep in mind is if you wish, you may any vote, if you certainly continue the discussion, but if you wish, you can defer any vote on this variance and have it take place at the same time as the vote on the subdivision. There's no reason why you have to vote on one before the other. They can both be next to each other.
So what would the advantage be?
That's, if any of you are wanting to discuss the subdivision more before making your decision regarding the variance, you're welcome to do that.
Should we discuss the subdivision when we're dealing with that or a little bit now?
Well, that's what.
I would recommend delaying any discussion about the subdivision until you've heard the staff report on the subdivision and heard the comments.
Okay.
Is my recommendation.
I would prefer to see that 31% reduced. Our requirement is 10% and 31% just seems pretty excessive compared to what we did change our code to. So if there was a way that that could be addressed in the subdivision hearing. I would make a motion to table this decision and then combine it with our next hearing for the subdivision proposal.
Anybody like to second? Commissioner Melster?
I will second that motion.
We have a motion to hold off on making a decision until we have our next hearing for our next application.
Just a point of clarification, you wouldn't be adding it to the next public hearing. You would simply be deferring the vote until after that
Deferring
public
until
hearing.
After our public hearing. All right. So we're deferring our vote until after the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? I say nay. but I'm overruled. So we will continue on and we will move to our next application. So I will open the public hearing for application SD 2401 at 7:20 and send it to Angela for the staff report.
Before I start on the staff report, just a reminder to have you guys talk into your mics, directly into your mics. Says our IT expert in the back.
It also makes it a lot easier to do minutes.
Yes, it does. All right. All right, we are now on to subdivision application 24-01. The applicant is requesting to subdivide an approximately 282,704 square foot, 6.49 acre property into 29 residential lots, 1 storm detention lot, and associated roadway and utility improvements. The subject property is to the east of 23rd Avenue and west of 27th Avenue and is identified in Lynn County Tax Assessor's Map number 13S01E 32CA, Tax Lot 4403. Lot sizes would range in size from 7,206 square feet to 8,626 square feet. All lots would be eligible to be developed with single-family dwellings and or duplexes per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.10020A and B. The subject property is in the residential low-density R1 zone. Project property and description, which is going to be repetitive, but application under consideration is proposed tentative subdivision plat. The proposed subdivision will be completed in one phase and include 29 residential lots, 1 storm detention lot, and associated roadway and utility improvements. Sorry, lot sizes would range in size from 7,206 square feet to 8,626 square feet. The subdivision approval is reliant on the variance application being filed concurrently. The subject properties are located east of 27th Avenue, west of 23rd Avenue, south of Harding Street, and is identified by Lynn County Tax Assessor's Map number 13S01E 32CA, Tax Lot 04403. With the approval of variance application VR 24-01, the proposed subdivision conforms to all applicable sections of the Sweet Home Municipal Code and, when necessary, City of Sweet Home's comprehensive plan. This application narrative provides findings of fact that demonstrate conformance with all applicable sections of Sweet Home Municipal Code. The zoning and comprehensive plan designation is all of these are the same as the variance, so I'm not going to repeat them. One section, though, that I did not state is that there has been no wetland delineation received as a submission of the staff report. Staff does recommend a condition of approval that a wetland delineation be completed before the development can commence. So I just wanted to add that to the comments there. All right. So submittal requirements, the following submittal requirements shall apply to preliminary plat applications for the subdivision or plan development. You have a list there, and if you don't mind, I'm not going to read all the way through them, but staff finds that the applicant submitted the application SD 24-01 on June 20th, 2024. Staff deemed the application complete on June 24th, 2024. Chapter 17, 110-050, each parcel shall satisfy the dimensional standards of applicable zone unless a variance from these standards is approved. Staff finds that the proposed subdivision is zoned residential low density R1. The density regulations for residential development are a maximum of 5.4 dwelling units per net acre. Duplexes shall count as 1 dwelling unit for purposes of density calculation. The minimum lot area for a single-family dwelling, manufactured home, or duplex is 7,000 square feet. The minimum width at building line is 70 feet. Tax lot 4403 is approximately 6.49 acres, and the maximum density allowed shall be 35 dwelling units. The applicant is proposing a subdivision consisting of 29 residential lots and 1 storm detention lot. Lot sizes would range in the size from 7,206 square feet to 8,626 square feet. The lot width at building line range from 70 feet to 75.74 feet, including easement widths. Based on the above findings, staff finds that the application complies with these criteria. The parcel shall meet the development standards for land division of Chapter 17.58. Staff finds the findings for Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.58 standards are found on pages 4 through 14 of the staff report, and I will be going through those following. Existing buildings shall comply with the setback requirements of the applicable zone unless a variance from a requirement is approved. Staff finds there are no existing buildings nor development proposed with this application. Building setback requirements will be reviewed during the development phase. Adequate public facilities, including access, shall be available to serve the existing and newly created parcels. If adjacent properties are undeveloped or landlocked, consideration will be given to extending appropriate access to those properties in accordance with adopted city policy. Staff finds the proposed site plan in attachment B shows an access and utility easement serving lot 20 on lot 21, terminating at the rear lot line of 21. The City of Sweet Home recommends a provision for a public water line easement in the common driveway serving lot 20 on 21, extending to the rear lot line of lot 20. The easement would run from the south right-of-way line of Foothills Drive to the south line of lot 20. The city is looking forward to 15 to 20 years to a need for an additional water reservoir in the area with the adjacent property to the south at the right elevation and location. It has access from Ames Creek Road, so that only a water line would be connected through the lots. We would likely place a conduit in the ground at the time of construction to feed the future water line through without the need for an excavation at a future time. This development will need to link the proposed water system on Foothills Drive to Harding Street. 23rd Avenue had a very small water line that was inadequate to connect. The city has placed 250 feet of 6-inch water line in 23rd Avenue from Harding Street, 6-inch water line southward a few feet from the drainage channel culvert. The proposed subdivision shall connect at the new end point now with a crossing over the channel. The channel culvert currently has only 6 inches to 8 inches of cover. The indicated proposed mainline sewer systems appear to be able to provide each lot with service. For the properties on the south boundary that appear to be sharing the driveway access, each lot will have its own sewer lateral line. With the above conditions, the application complies with this criteria. Minimum lot area. Minimum lot area shall conform to the requirements of the zoning district in which the parcel is located. Access easements or access strips to flag lots shall not be included in the calculation of lot area purposes for determining compliance with any minimum lot size provisions of this development code. Excuse me. Staff finds that the subject lots are zoned residential low density. The minimum lot area in the R1 zone is 7,000 square feet. Based on the submitted site plans and attachment B, the proposed lot sizes shall range in size from approximately 7,206 square feet to approximately 8,626 square feet. Based on the above findings, staff finds the application complies with these criteria. Lot width and depth. The depth of a lot or parcel shall not be more than 3 times the lot width. Lots and parcels created for commercial, industrial, or public uses shall be exempt from the width to depth ratio provisions. Staff finds that based on the submitted site plans and attachment B, no depth of lot or parcel exceeds 3 times the width of the parcel. The applicant has requested a variance to the Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.42120C to allow lot width to be measured from a property lines as opposed to an easement boundary for lots 21 through 29. Staff recommends a condition of approval that the approval of the proposed subdivision application SD 24-01 be contingent on the approval of the variance application VR 24-01. With the above conditions, staff finds the application complies with these criteria. Access. All new lots or parcels shall access a public street, except that a residential lots or parcel may be accessed by a private access easement developed in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 17.42 when it is determined that a public street access is 1, infeasible due to parcel shape, terrain, or location of existing structures, 2, unnecessary to provide for future development of adjoining property, 3, no more than 10% of the lots within a subdivision may be accessed by a private street or private access easement. Staff finds the proposed site plan shows all lots shall have either direct access to Foothills Drive or access via an access easement and utility easement. The applicant is requesting a variance to Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.58030C3 to allow 31% or 9 lots as opposed to 10%, approximately 3 lots, within the subdivision to be accessed by private access easement. Staff recommends a condition of approval that approval of the proposed subdivision application SD 24-01 be contingent on the approval of the variance application VR 24-01. With the above conditions, the application complies with this criteria. Flag lots. Flag lots shall be subject to the following development standards. The access strip shall be a minimum of 20 feet in width. The improved surfaces shall be a minimum of 14 feet in width. The access strip shall be included in the lot area calculation. If the length of the access strip exceeds 150 feet, the parcel or lot shall include a turnaround area per applicable fire district. Staff finds the applicant is not proposing flag lots. To be clear, these are access and utility easements. So just so you know. So through lots shall be avoided except where essential to provide separation of residential development from traffic arteries, adjacent non-residential activities, or to overcome specific disadvantages of topography. Screening or buffering pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 17.54 may be required during the review of the land division request. Staff finds the applicant is not proposing any through lots. Lot sidelines. The sidelines of lots, as far as practical, shall run at right angles to the public street, or private access easement upon which the lot or parcel faces. Staff finds, as depicted on attachment B, the proposed parcels would have sidelines that are at or very close to right angles to the public street. Based on the above findings, staff finds the application complies with these criteria. Utility easements. Utility easements shall be provided on lot areas where necessary to accommodate public utilities. Easement width shall conform to adopted engineering standards. Staff finds, based on the submitted site plans, attachment B, the applicant has proposed public utilities to be located in the public right-of-way and utility easements throughout the subdivision, located on attachment B, sheets C101, C103, and C104. The proposed site plan in attachment B shows an access and utility easement serving lot 20 on lot 21. The City of Sweet Home recommends a provision for a water line easement in the common driveway serving lot 20 on 21. The easement would run from the south right-of-way line of Foothills Drive to the south line of lot 20. The city is looking forward 15 to 20 years to a need for additional water reservoir in the area with the adjacent property to the south at the right elevation and location. It has access from Ames Creek Road so that only a water line would be connected through the lots. It has access from Ames Creek Road so that on the water line would be connected through the lots. We would likely place a conduit in the ground at the time of the construction to feed future water line through without the need of excavation at the future. With the above conditions, staff finds the application complies with these criteria. Pardon me for 1 second. Okay, 17.58 additional standards. General, the length, width, and shape of blocks shall be designed with regard to providing adequate building sites for the use contemplated. Consideration of needs for convenient access, circulation, control, and safety of street traffic, including pedestrian and bicyclists, and recognition of limitations and opportunities of topography. Staff finds the subject lots are zoned residential low density R1. The minimum lot area of the R1 zone is 7,000 square feet. Based on the submitted site plans, attachment B, the proposed lot sizes shall range in size from approximately 7,206 square feet to approximately 8,626 square feet. Lot sizes provide adequate building sites for single-family dwellings and duplexes. Based on the submitted site plans, attachment B, the applicant has proposed a local street width of 50 feet. The proposed access and utility easements on the south side of Foothills Drive are approximately 20 feet wide, and the shared driveways are paved width of approximately 16 feet. Staff finds that the length, width, and shape of the block provided adequate building sites, and the applicant considered safe pedestrian and bicycle traffic, convenient access, and traffic circulation. Based on the above findings, staff finds the application complies with these criteria. Sizes. Blocks shall not exceed 1,000 feet in between street lines with a preferred length of 500 feet. Exceptions are permitted for blocks adjacent to arterial streets or in the previous development pattern or topographical conditions justify a greater length. The recommended minimum distance between collector street intersections and arterial streets is 1,800 feet. Staff finds, based on the submitted site plans and attachment B, the length of the subdivision block from 27th Avenue to 23rd Avenue is approximately 953 feet. The proposed length is similar to, and in some cases shorter in length than the blocks in the surrounding neighborhoods. Based on the above findings, staff finds the application complies with these criteria. Traffic circulation. The subdivision shall be laid out to provide safe, convenient, and direct vehicle, bicycle, and pedestrian access to nearby residential areas, neighborhood activity centers, such as schools and parks, shopping areas, and employment centers, and provide safe, convenient, and direct traffic circulation. At a minimum, nearby means the distance from a subdivision boundary, a quarter mile for pedestrians and 1 mile for bicyclists. Staff finds the intersection of Foothills Drive and 23rd Avenue will require a street name sign and post installed. A stop sign will not be necessary. Not every local street intersection needs a stop control device. State of Oregon traffic rules provide guidance to drivers on general right-of-way use as T and cross intersections. The plan indicates a curb and sidewalk along the east side of 23rd Avenue. That would be a half street, which is really a 3/4 street on the ground comprised of sidewalk, curb, and drainage, pavement to the center line and opposite lane. There will need to be a curb on that side because residents will travel to and from the subdivision in both directions on 23rd Avenue. Because of the poor condition of 23rd Avenue and it being most direct path westward to the community, the improvements on 23rd Avenue need to extend to Harding Street. The city may be able to partner with the developer to improve the street network at 23rd Avenue and Harding Street. Relevant to street standards, 27th Avenue is a 40-foot right-of-way, 28th Avenue is a 50-foot right-of-way, 29th Avenue is a 60-foot right-of-way, Mountain View is a 40-foot right-of-way, and Harding Street is a 40-foot right-of-way. With the above conditions, the application complies with this criteria. Connectivity. To achieve the objective in C, traffic circulation above, the city may require the following. Stub-in streets where the potential exists for additional residential development on adjacent property. The city may require reserve strips and street plugs to preserve the objectives of street extensions, access ways, public access ways to provide a safe, efficient, and direct connection to cul-de-sac streets, to pass through oddly shaped or blocks longer than 600 feet to provide for networks of public path, creating access to nearby residential area neighborhood activity centers such as schools and parks, shopping areas, and employment centers. Staff finds there are no reserve strips or stub-in streets are required for this proposed subdivision. The proposed subdivision block is longer than 600 feet. However, staff finds the proposed public access way provides safe, efficient, and direct connection of Foothills Drive from 23rd Avenue to 27th Avenue. Attachment B, sheet C102, shows the access and utility easements as shared driveways for all lots abutting the easement. Based on the above findings, staff finds that the application complies with these criteria. Collector and arterial connections, accessway, bikeway, or sidewalk connections with adjoining arterial and collector streets shall be provided if any portion of the site's arterial collector street frontage is over 600 feet from either a subdivision access street or access way. The placement of an access way may be modified or eliminated if natural features such as adverse topography, streams, wetlands preclude such a connection. The applicant is not proposing a collector or arterial street with this application. Design standards. Pedestrian bicycle access ways shall meet the following standards. Minimum dedicated width of 10 feet, minimum approved width of 8 feet, and the access way shall be designed to prohibit vehicle traffic. In Sweet Home Municipal Code 1742-040, local street standards show a minimum required bike lane of 7 feet. However, this is a topographical error that will be amended in future code amendment. Staff finds that the on-street bicycle improvement matching the surrounding neighborhoods is adequate. Based on the above findings, staff find that the application complies with these criteria. 1758-060 improvement requirements. So improvements include frontage improvements, project streets, monuments, surface drainage and stormwater systems, sanitary sewer, water systems, sidewalks, streetlights, street signs, and other requirements. Staff finds the maintenance of the private stormwater basin is up to local residents with or without an HOA who benefit from the subdivision development and the stormwater basin, not the city. The property needs to remain under the ownership of the developer or an HOA. The proposed site plan attachment B shows an access and utility easement serving lot 20 on 21, terminating at the rear lot line of 21. The city of Sweet Home recommends a provision for a public water line easement in the common driveway serving lot 20 on 21, extending to the rear lot line of lot 20. The easement would run from the south right-of-way line of Foothills Drive to the south line of lot 20. The city is looking forward, I'm going to skip that part since I've read it 3 times, if you don't mind. The development will need to link the proposed water system on Foothills Drive to Harding Street, 23rd Avenue, and a very small water line that was inadequate to connect to. The city has placed a 200 feet of 6-inch water line in 23rd Avenue from Harding Street, 6-inch water line southward to a few feet from the drainage channel culvert. This proposed subdivision shall connect a new endpoint now with a crossing under the channel. The channel culvert currently has only 6 to 8 inches of cover. The indicated proposed mainline sewer systems appear to be able to provide each lot with service. For the properties on the south boundary that appear to be sharing the driveway accesses, each lot will have its own sewer lateral. Attachment B, sheet C102, shows a 3-foot planter strip. The intersection of Foothills Drive and 23rd Avenue will require a street name sign and post installed. A stop sign will not be necessary. Not every local street needs a stop control condition. The plan indicates a curb and sidewalk along the east side of 23rd Avenue. I know, I read that too. Apparently I need to read this better. Staff shall recommend a condition of approval that the applicant comply with all improvement requirements listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.58.060. With the above condition, the application complies with this criteria. Completion of improvements. All improvements required under this chapter shall be completed to the city standards or assured through the performance bond or other instrument acceptable to the city attorney prior to the approval of the final plat of the subdivision. In no case shall the bond exceed 5% of the remaining project improved by the city engineer. Many of the criteria under this in the staff report is repetitive, so I'm going to read what's different than the other. So streetlights will need to be installed at the appropriate locations. All new streetlights in subdivision shall be aluminum material with an anchor pier. The light fixture itself shall be an LED luminaire and shall conform to Oregon PUC. It talks about the water system connection, which I've already mentioned a few times. The mainline sewer, which is in the previous one, water will be connected to water will be connected on Foothills Drive and will be an 8-inch C900 with saddle taps for service lines and tied into a 6-inch C900 line on 23rd Avenue to loop the system. Sanitary sewer will be an 8-inch 30-34 and tie into Foothills Drive. Storm lines will be a minimum of 12 inches and be either 30-40 or C900 depending on the depth and cover to finish. Chapter 17.42040 requires planter strips. The proposal shows 50-foot right-of-way, which provides adequate width on each side for 5-foot sidewalk, 3-foot planter, and a 6-inch curb, which provides the minimum 7-foot parking and travel lane widths. It needs a street sign. We talked about the curb and sidewalk on 23rd Avenue. Staff recommends a condition of approval that the applicant comply with all improvement requirements listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.58.060. I would also like to add, staff would like to add 2 additional conditions to this one, which I included in a separate sheet for you. Additional condition number, pursuant to an improvement agreement, staff recommends a condition approval that the applicant shall construct a half-street improvement along the east frontage of 23rd Avenue between Harding Street and Foothills Drive, as specified in the city's street design standards and consistent with the Sweet Home Transportation System Plan. The half-street improvement shall include 8-foot travel lane in each direction, 7-foot parking lane, 6-inch curb, 8-inch minimum gutter bar, 3-foot planter strip, and 5-foot sidewalk as shown in detail 3 sheet C102. The applicant shall receive system development charges, SDC credits, for all costs associated with the off-site half-street improvements in 23rd Avenue constructed beyond the width required to satisfy fire code standard secondary access of 20 feet. And then additional condition number 2 that we would like to recommend is staff recommends a condition of approval that the city of Sweet Home shall acquire a right-of-way dedication along the west property frontage of 2305 Harding Street so that construction of 23rd Avenue street and pedestrian improvements along this property frontage may occur. In the event the right-of-way is not acquired, 23rd Avenue improvements along this property frontage will be reduced to what can be achieved within the existing right-of-way. With the above conditions, the application complies with this criteria. Conclusion and recommendation, based on the findings discussed in section 3 above, staff recommends that the application be approved. The application shall be subject to compliance with the conditions listed below as required in the findings of fact presented in the review criteria in section 3 above. Any modifications to the conditions listed below will require an approval in accordance with provisions of law, such as variance, subsequent land use application, etc. If the Planning Commission approves this application, staff recommends that the conditions of approval listed below are required in order to ensure that the application is consistent with the findings and review and design criteria in Section 3 as required by the Sweet Home Municipal Code and other provisions of law. Appeals to the Land Board use of appeals may only be based on review and design criteria above. Recommended conditions if application is approved. 1, the final configuration of proposed lots shall substantially conform to the plot plan reviewed in this application. See attachment B. The applicant shall subdivide an approximately 282,704 square foot, 6.49 acre property into 29 residential lots, 1 storm detention lot, and associated roadway and utility improvements. The subject properties are identified in the Lynn County Tax Assessor's map number 13S01E 32CA lot, tax lot. Oh, sorry, that was a typo. Tax lot 4403. Lot sizes would range in size from 7,206 square feet to 8,626 square feet. All lots would be eligible to be developed with single family dwellings or duplexes per Sweet Home Municipal Code 1710-020 A and B. The subject property is a residential low density R1 zone. The subject properties are in the R1 zone. Sorry, I don't know what I did there. Approval of variance application VR 24-01. The applicant shall provide the city a copy and completed wetland delineation report before the development can commence. The applicant shall provide a public water line easement through lot 21 in the common driveway that serves lot 20. The easement would be the same size as the proposed shared utility and access easement as noted on the attached site plan attachment B. The easement would run from the south right-of-way line of Foothills Drive to the south line of lot 20 and shall be shown on the final plat. The applicant shall link the proposed water system on Foothills Drive to Harding Street. The proposed subdivision shall connect to a new 6-inch water line endpoint with a crossing under the channel. The channel culvert currently has a 6-inch to 8-inch of cover. The applicant shall install a street name sign at the intersection of Foothills Drive and 23rd Avenue. The stormwater basin shall remain under private ownership and not be transferred to the city of Sweet Home. The maintenance of private stormwater basins is up to the local residents with or without an HOA. The applicant shall either provide an easement on the adjacent lot to the stormwater detention area, which is 751 23rd Avenue, or provide a public right-of-way connection to provide a connection from the stormwater detention area to the stormwater ditch. The applicant shall provide stormwater collection easement along lots 12 to 20 to accommodate the runoff from the south hillside. The stormwater collection will be through the utility easements to Foothills Drive. On 23rd Avenue, the applicant shall develop half-street improvements on the ground comprised of sidewalk, curb, and drainage pavement to the center line and the opposite lane. The improvements on 23rd Avenue need to extend to Harding Street. The two recommended conditions I would like to insert here to become 11 and 12 and then shift all the numbers down. So pursuant to an improvement agreement, the applicant shall construct a half-street improvement along the east frontage of 23rd Avenue between Harding Street and Foothills Drive as specified in the city street design standards and consistent with the Sweet Home Transportation System Plan. The half-street improvement shall include 8-foot travel lane in each direction, 7-foot parking lane, 6-inch curb, 8-inch minimum gutter bar, 3-foot planter strip, and a 5-foot sidewalk shown in detailed 3 sheet C102. The applicant shall receive system development charges, credits for all the costs associated with the off-site street improvements in 23rd Avenue constructed beyond the width required to satisfy the fire code standard secondary access of 20 feet. And then the other recommended condition to add to this is the city of Sweet Home shall acquire a right-of-way dedication along the west property frontage of 2305 Harding Street so that construction of 23rd Avenue Street and pedestrian improvements along the property frontage may occur. In the event that the right-of-way is not acquired, 23rd Avenue improvements along the property frontage will be reduced to what can be achieved within the existing right-of-way. And then the applicant shall provide each lot with its own sewer lateral line. The applicant shall comply with all requirements identified by the Community and Economic Development, Engineering, and Public Works Engineering departments. The applicant shall comply with all storm drainage and grading requirements in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.46. The applicant shall comply with all utility lines and facility requirements in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.48. The applicant shall comply with all street standard requirements in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.42. The new property line shall be situated so that all buildings and structures complied with yard setback requirements of the residential low-density R1 zone. In addition to engineering standards improvements installed by the developer for any land division, either as a requirement of these regulations or the developer's options, shall conform with the requirements of the development code. The improvement standards and specifications adopted by the city and shall be installed in accordance with the following procedures. City approval required. Improvement work shall not commence until plans are approved by the city. All plans shall be prepared in accordance with the requirements of the city. Notification. Improvement work shall not commence until the city has been notified in advance, and if work has been discontinued for any reason, it shall not be resumed until the city has been notified. Inspections. Improvements shall be constructed under the inspection and to the satisfaction of the Public Works Director or designee. The city may require changes in typical street sections and improvements if unusual conditions arise during construction to warrant such changes. Installation of utilities. All underground utilities, sanitary sewer, and storm drains installed by the developer shall be constructed prior to the surfacing of the streets. Stubs for service connections for underground utilities and sanitary sewer shall be placed to a length eliminating the necessity for disturbing the street improvements when service connections are made. As-built drawings, a map or plan showing the public improvements as built shall be filed with the Department of Public Works upon completion of the improvements per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.58. Number 18, within 2 years of the final decision, a final approved plat for first phase shall be recorded with the county. The first phase of the final plat is not recorded within 2 years. The preliminary approval shall lapse and a new application shall be required. All phases of the approved plat shall be recorded within 10 years of the final date of decision per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17110-080A. Staff would like to ask for an amendment to that condition to have it be recorded within 3 years. Due to the wetland delineation requirement, those usually take a long time and sometimes cannot be done in 2 years. So we would like to amend that to 3 years if approved. And number 19, effective date of the final plat approval. The approval process for a development shall become final upon the recording of the approved final plat together with the required documents with the county. Approved final plat shall be void 1 year after the final city approval if they are not recorded. Again, I would like to also change that one to 3 years based on the need for the wetland delineation if that amendment is allowed. 20, the applicant shall obtain all applicable development permits, which include but are not limited to public works permits, development permits, including building permits, erosion control permits. The applicant shall obtain a 1200C stormwater permit from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality and any Department of State land permits as applicable. Planning Commission action. In taking action on a subdivision, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. The decision on the application must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. If approved, the Planning Commission may impose conditions of approval. Staff's recommended conditions are included in Section 4. Appeal period. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission decision on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date that the notice of the decision is mailed. Order. After the Planning Commission makes a decision, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order would memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval if the application is approved. Motion. After opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission's options include the following. 1, move to approve the application SD 24-01, including the conditions of approval listed in Section 4 of the staff report, adopting the findings of fact listed in Section 3 of the staff report, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. 2, move to deny application SD 24-01, including adopting the findings, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain or for other.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Angela.
Mhm.
All right. With that, we will move to the applicant's testimony. I'd like to invite the applicant up.
Good evening, Laura LaRock with Udell Engineering and Brian Vandetta of the same, representing the applicant of this proposal. So thank you again for having us this evening. Today we'll be talking about a proposed subdivision. The proposal consists of a 29-lot subdivision with public and private improvements to serve those lots. So as proposed with the subdivision, there's 29 lots in one track. The track is for storm water detention. That's located just to the west of lot 11. Most of the lots front Foothills Trail. The remainder of the lots would have access by easement to Foothills Drive as well. Included in the proposal are full street improvements along Foothills Drive. Currently, there no public street exists in this area, so a full street system would be designed. That would include a dedication of a 50-foot wide roadway strip, improved with a paved travel surface for two-way traffic and on-street parking. Along the roadway surface would be a planting strip, landscape planting strips, as well as sidewalks. Included in the proposal are also improvements along 23rd Avenue. Those improvements would also include some portions of sidewalk improvements, pavement, and as Angela mentioned, the developer is willing to enter into an agreement with the city of Sweet Home to perform full improvements when the city is able to acquire the needed right-of-way to perform those improvements. In the interim, a paved travel surface would be able to allow fire apparatus to use and maneuver that roadway, or also in addition to 27th Avenue and circulate fully through the subdivision. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian for utilities and drainage.
Okay, thank you, Laura. I get the exciting part. So I think I'll walk through the utilities one by one real quick. Sewer. So sanitary sewer is available to serve the subject property in 23rd Avenue. It's also available in Foothills Drive, but in evaluating the elevations, street grade goes downhill to the west. So coming from 23rd Avenue allows the elevations to serve all the lots via gravity. So that's the plan, to bring it up from that side. Water, the plan is to conform to the suggested condition of approval. We'll be extending the water line from the east end where it terminates at the end of Foothills Drive. We'll take it through our street extension of Foothills Drive. We'll turn the corner in 23rd Avenue and we'll take it north, go under the ditch system and or culvert there, and then connect to the existing 6-inch, completing that loop as suggested in the conditions. Stormwater, the natural topography sheds from south to north. We're sitting about midway down a ridge line with a portion of this development. There is a large drainage ditch on the north property line, or just north of our north property line. We're going to plan to intercept that in the center of 23rd Avenue. We'll be planning to replace that culvert with a sufficiently sized culvert. Our preliminary study shows that the existing culvert is not of adequate size. So we'll replace that. We'll make our connection. We've also built into our design flow control and detention, which in a nutshell is we will include restrictive orifices in a flow control manhole that limit the amount of flow leaving the site to the same amount that would leave the site in today's pre-developed conditions. And then the additional volume that's generated with the impervious surfaces in the development would be backed up and stored in the detention pond and then metered out over time, so that the rate being released downstream to the system remains the same prior to development. So that's really it with respect to utilities. They are all available. They are all of sufficient size based on what we've calculated. We actually have construction documents about 90% done. We were prepared to turn them in. We'll spend the next few weeks probably evaluating that and making some adjustments based on some of the conditions we've received. And then I'd like to stop with utilities right there and see if there are any questions, and then I'll switch gears and discuss something else. Any questions
Thank you
about
very much.
utilities?
So with the proposal for the storm water, do you see that potentially alleviating some of the issues that the surrounding properties may have currently?
That's a great question. No,
Okay.
but I also expect it not to exacerbate or improve them. And I'm glad you asked that question, because with our development, we're required to provide a sufficient system that not only provides for our development, but also does not create an adverse impact for any upstream or downstream properties. And we'll do that, but we also are not going to be solving all of the pre-existing problems that you heard testimony about tonight.
Got it. How do you see maintenance of that stormwater detention lot happening?
Okay, good question. Couple of options, and we don't have a final option landed on yet with our client, but there are two options, maybe even actually three. So we can do it with a private maintenance easement, and we distribute a maintenance monetary responsibility amongst all the lots, similar to an HOA, but not formulating an HOA. And then they would be enforceable just through civil action if participants didn't pay their share. Or we could form an HOA and we'd actually assess each of the properties within the subdivision for that maintenance. Or we could add that lot to lot 11, potentially the ownership, and then the ownership of lot 11 could enjoy the open space, but then they'd also be responsible for the day-to-day maintenance of it as well. Because some of the misnomers with detention ponds is they don't hold water throughout the year. So they're grass depressions. They do have value to a private property owner. They could run their dog in it, their kids can play in it. So the owner of lot 11 may enjoy that. So another good question. We don't have the final answer, but those are three of the most common options.
Okay.
We'd love for the city to take over ownership of it, but they've told us they don't want to do that.
I'll probably get killed for bringing this up. But I just throw it out for everybody to think of.
Henry, can you lean into your microphone?
Oh,
Thank you.
excuse me, you're right. You probably didn't hear the first part. I'll probably get killed. And especially after we read our guidelines tonight. But what would you think of just eliminating the beauty strip and widening the street, allowing for more parking, and allowing for better fire truck access? We've observed other communities, and the sidewalk and the curb without a beauty strip are used quite often.
Well, I think the big decision would come to your city staff, but as a private developer, I'm going to speak for my client, and I'd say there wouldn't be any objection to that. It would not, just to be clear though, it would not provide any additional parking. It would provide maybe some additional clearances for the fire department. But what we've designed is based on what your development code dictates. This is your adopted standard for a local street, what we've proposed.
Yeah, there was some concern expressed previously about Foothills Drive, the width of it on the right side, and then how it narrows down. And that thought just came to me that, if we eliminated the beauty strip, that it would allow you to widen the street. And the other thing that I mentioned earlier is the storm retention on the corner. It would seem that we could round that out.
So as currently drawn now, that radius does comply with the fire code. It may look tight, but there's street parking on the side, so that adds an additional 7 foot to that radius. So on the inside travel path, it does comply with the fire code. Okay. So I'd like to maybe go back to some of the earlier concerns or discussions that you're having about whether or not you could support or couldn't support the additional lots that would be accessed by a private easement. I know your code says 10%. My personal professional opinion is that 10% comes as an arbitrary number. I don't think it's founded on any science or studies. And I'd also point out that those variance requests are very specific to unique situations. We feel that this is a very unique situation for a couple of reasons. One is the street stub of Foothills Drive is established for us. We can't move it north or south. So that lends itself to a depth from that point south of 220-ish feet. So if we divide those into long, narrow lots and we don't have flag lots, a couple things happen. One is we get nowhere close to what your urban density standard is, so we're not efficiently developing the property. And two, we're setting ourselves up for another issue and that is the lot depth would exceed 3 times the lot width. So then we're asking for another variance. So really, in our opinion, the only efficient way to get to the southern portion of the property, because we've already heard testimony that there is no developable land further to the south. It's a very steep ridge, so building a public street up that way doesn't make sense. So So really the only way to do it is to divide it up or plan and design it the way we've done. And I understand you've got a standard of 10%, but percentages of smaller subdivisions accumulate to the same number as the percentage of a large subdivision. So to me, that's why I say it's more of an arbitrary number, and it's not based on any traffic study. It's not based on any science that I'm aware of. Maybe Blair could speak to that. Or maybe you have a background as to where it came from. I don't know. But we're not trying to gain more out of the property than what your code allows, because the code allows 5.4 lots per net acre. We are right at that or slightly under it. So I completely understand your comments. I just wanted to further explain or elaborate on what we believe that this extraordinary circumstances are with this property that dictate that number of flag lots. Because I mean, I myself couldn't really imagine what else we would do with the property back there if we couldn't access that with easements, other than have extremely large lots that don't urbanize the property to what the code standards dictate us doing.
There is another option as well, that those large lots lend the option to the developer to go with the duplex that's automatically allowed on an R1 lot these days. And even with a 7,000 square foot lot, you could fit a duplex on each one of those. It'd be tight, but nonetheless.
Absolutely, you could. And they're allowed on those lots too. I agree with you.
Yeah, they are allowed. And it may or may not lend a developer's interest to densify up with rentals, assuming a duplex is a rental, versus a more regimented, typically rectangular lot for single family residence. So that's a ramification also there.
Sure.
And to Henry, I hate to disagree with you sometimes, but I like the idea of the beauty strips, the planter strips along streets for the purpose of street trees. If you look at the difference between 27th Avenue and 28th Avenue, 28th Avenue has pretty much no trees on it. There's a few. 27th Avenue, on the other hand, is dense with trees. And that's kind of a nice thing. But anyway, I tend to lean towards that and narrowing up curb to curb widths in order to accommodate a planter strip. Some planter strips are too narrow, like 2 feet or 2.5. That's silly. And one other comment, at least at the moment, is in your highlighted section on, let's see here. Oh yeah, C102, page, yeah, C102, where you have the sidewalk, well, the driveway aprons. Most houses, I realize that they're laid out so that it kind of spreads out the parking possibilities, but most houses these days are asymmetrical with their driveways and layout. And so they're not necessarily in the middle of the properties. So, they can be, but they're
agree.
not always.
But remember, we did testify earlier that the plan is to have an RV pad on one side. So that is going to push the driveway over quite far from the property line,
Yeah,
close to the center.
it's a possibility.
Yeah.
That kind of leads into my question. And my question is really about resident access and safety in the event of an emergency or something were to happen, or even just with the growth of the area. We heard in the staff findings that we know that these roads need improvements. And one of the many conditions of approval is that you will help with these road improvements. But the easements to these lots in the back also cause me to have some access concerns. And although I know that residents will perhaps be very excited to see an RV lot on every, or a RV pad on the lots, that means there's even additional traffic and more vehicles that are expected to be at each additional property that have no street parking, and they have limited access to the rest of the city and getting to where they need to be. So talk to me about your plans for this community and how access is going to be eased and their safety has been implemented in this plan.
Good question. Thank you for that. So the street is designed and going to be built per your local street standard. So that is something that your staff's worked long and hard to come up with those standards. So Foothills Drive is being built with 2 travel lanes, 1 in each direction, parking on both sides.
Yes, but
Go ahead.
yeah, yes, that is being built, but there is a significant number of lots that are going, and the connection streets to where anybody in this community might want to go are limited and narrow and not developed. So that will cause some serious impact, not just to the residents who live there now, but the residents who might buy property. So I understand that you have planned Foothills Drive and it is to our code. I can see that and I appreciate that. My concern is, what about the additional lanes, because you couldn't build an additional road back here to access all these other houses, and they'll be going through here. They'll be bringing their RVs through here. Their families will be bringing things through here. So just, that's my concern.
So those drive lanes are designed, I believe, to be 20-foot wide paved, which meets the fire code, which is a very safe and efficient travel. It allows for 2-way travel in both directions. It's less than 150-foot deep, which meets the fire code. So we don't have to provide them a turnaround. We've strategically done that. So we're not going to force them to drive all the way in and turn around. They can still back up that distance because they feel safe and comfortable doing that. So we think it is very safe and efficient. The lots in the rear are oversized. They're over 8,000 square feet. That will allow the people that reside back there to have not only the parking that's necessary, but also turnaround space so they can go head out versus backing out those flag easements. 23rd Avenue, I would completely agree with you in its current state today is extremely deficient in size. But we've worked with city staff and we plan to enter into a mutual improvement agreement, or my client does, to improve it to 2 travel lanes, 1 in each direction, and parking along the east side, with the caveat that the city can obtain the third-party right-of-way necessary at the corner, because there is no nexus to put that requirement upon my client, because he's only required to improve the street technically to get his secondary access to a 20-foot width to meet the fire code. So we are working to make it very safe and efficient. The street connectivity will flow very well, in my opinion. We're not forcing everybody to go out one direction, which was one of the options discussed, only having 23rd be an emergency access and directing all the traffic out to the east. But we're willing, or my client is willing, to go the extra mile to improve that to a half street with pedestrian way on the east side, to not only make the vehicular traffic safe and efficient, but to make the pedestrian traffic, because we know there's a school very nearby.
Yeah, and just to chime in on that, we do have a number of plans that we're trying to move forward to improve pedestrian safety throughout the city, especially for the school children. With the proximity to Sweet Home Junior High School, we are hoping, we've applied for 2 different grants to hopefully have a multi-use path added to Mountain View Road. And this development, and if this is approved as proposed, there's only a short link between 23rd and Mountain View that the city would have to find a way to get a sidewalk done, which is significantly easier than where we would be otherwise. So I'm very pleased with the potential for sidewalks with this plan.
I do appreciate the developer's willingness to partner with the city to make some improvements that are outside of this, what he needs to do. With regard to the number of easements accessing the lots. We did change our code based upon previous testimony from other subdivision proposals. And I think when we met and did our code, revised our code, we did listen to what our citizens were saying to us. And I think we made those decisions based on what the community felt we liked for our community. And I don't, does that sound about
I
right?
feel like
Why we
made
did
it
that?
Arbitrary.
Yeah. So that's where I'm just a little stuck on that. I love that you're doing maximum density. That's appreciated. The access, the beauty strips, I'm all for pedestrian safety, especially having those beauty strips there on the sidewalks. But just that one little thing is where I'm struggling a little bit. Could you, I don't, I don't. No, I just felt like we specifically spoke and had extensive discussions about that when we rewrote our code.
But there are always examples of extraordinary circumstances that don't fit within
I
every
know.
situation also. And that's what they make the variance process for.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree.
But this was a plan that was resubmitted to see if that variance was important to us in the city. Like if we thought that code, that piece of our code was important to the future development, or if it was something that, because a plan had already been written once before we decided on that code, if we would allow it. And really, we were changing our code specifically so we would write things down and make things specific so we wouldn't continue to make so many exceptions, that we would have codes to keep our decisions fair and balanced. And so that's why the variance has to be dictated by the property itself, not necessarily the plan. And although I understand that this is maximizing your space and taking advantage of a previous plan, I think there are more creative ways that this could be done that would make it fall more into code and be a more comfortable community for anyone who wanted to live here in Sweet Home.
Something a little more unique then.
Well, I mean, this is actually quite unique.
Mm.
I think that this plan is pretty unique and creative for using the lot, the space and the acreage, but it just doesn't conform to our code and the variance that it's requesting. It improves for the builder, but I don't see how it makes a lot of sense for the new community, the plan itself. Like it made sense for the planner, but it doesn't make sense, the plan.
The one thing about the easements that are in the diagram as it is, accessing the two rear properties on each one of those, if one had easements there, they actually ought to be extended, because in the reality of a driver, they're going to cross somebody else's corner in order to get to their house, in those kinds of scenarios. Not recommending hammerheads or anything else for, turnaround easements, but just the ability to cross. But the problem with easements like that, I believe, is that you've got to have good neighbors. And most of the time that might happen. But there are other ways of doing that. And the city has an aversion to hammerhead cul-de-sacs for good reason, I believe. The bulb cul-de-sacs in the standard form are an ocean of pavement that is hardly justifiable to my point. But there are options to narrow that diameter to a reasonable number, and you don't have to pave curb to curb across that diameter. There are ways of minimizing that. The west half of those properties are on a hillside slope, going up a pretty decent slope. So whether there would be a need for 2 or 3, one would have to dimension out the reality, of course. But those could actually be pretty nice, short, shallow, public cul-de-sacs as an option. And would still provide pretty darn close to the same number of properties. But yeah, and absolutely you're right. The asymmetrical condition of the access street lends one side to a normal size rectangle and the other to an oversized rectangle. And how do you get there from here? Easements are the typical way. They're not always the best way.
Do you have any other questions for our applicant? Any other comments?
We may want to call them back after we've had our discussions.
Oh, well, we've got to have our other testimonies as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to our proponent's testimony. This is testimony from those wishing to speak in favor of the application. All right, we'll move to the opponent's testimony. So this is testimony from people wishing to speak in opposition to the application. And I will invite Gary up to start. And Gary, if you will, again, state your name and address. Thank you.
My name is Gary Jarvis, and I live at 2941 Foothills Drive here in Sweet Home. And before you set a timer on me, I have a question that I would like to ask first.
Okay.
And that question is, where those flag lots are, the driveway is that the driveway for all 4 of those lots in each, the ones to the periphery on the side as well as the ones in back? Or do each of those ones on Foothills have their own private driveway?
That is a good question to the applicant.
The applicant can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that each of those access easements is only for the back 2, and that the ones that are directly on Foothills would have their own driveway. Is that correct? Right.
Okay,
So-
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so my comment, what I'd like to say is this plan does not seem substantially different than the one which was denied previously. And so the reasons that it was previously denied, many of those reasons still exist. It wasn't denied? Oh, it was approved? Okay, then strike that, and I apologize for that. I thought that it had been denied, but the reasons that I was opposed to that first one, I have the same reasons that I personally am opposed to this as it is presented, and that is because of the reasons stated by the fire department last time, the access for the apparatus as well as egress, that even when they get in there, especially with the flag lots, that you've got people now that if the emergency is in one of those back lots, the people in that other lot either cannot access their place or cannot egress from their place. A 31% request for flag lots is a huge request when current allowance is only 10%. And regardless of whether or not it sets legal precedent, in the future, if you do permit it, people will try to argue. Future developers will try to argue that you essentially set precedent, and our circumstances are pretty much identical to that. And so accordingly, we want you to grant variances for us as well. Flag lots are not in keeping with phase 1 and phase 2 of the Ashbrook neighborhood, and this property here was supposed to be phase 3 of the Ashbrook neighborhood. And it actually makes it more like a trailer park seem like, because of the fact that the curb appeal is going to be different. Even with the beauty strips and things like that, the curb appeal is still going to be different, because with each of those houses on what is the south side of Foothills Drive, each of those houses will have their own driveway, and then there will be an additional driveway for the ones in the back, and that is going to diminish parking on that side of the street, because you're going to have driveways only half as far apart as you normally would have. By the same token, as Blair mentioned earlier, that the reduction in width of curb to curb for Foothills is going to be, his words were, the same as 27th. If you've ever driven down 27th Avenue when there are cars parked on both sides of the street, there is a single lane. There is not two lanes. Cars cannot pass each other. If the cars are approached, one has to pull in as though they're parking to allow traffic to pass. Even with and then with a narrower 23rd, even when it's improved, it will still be narrower than what Foothills is, which means that most of the traffic is still going to go down either Harding down to 27th, which is already too narrow in my estimation, or they will go down to 29th, and 29th, we already have 80% of the people that live in that neighborhood blow through the stop sign at 29th and Foothills. So that will be an additional minimum of 29 more cars. And but we do have concern also about the, like I said, the parking and the narrowing of the scope of that street.
Gary, just to interrupt, your 3 minutes are up. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, time permitting, if we have permit, I have 3 other things that I'd like to say that will take about 20 seconds.
It's up to the chair.
Would we like to allow?
Okay.
To hear your
Flag Watch will also have more concrete, so you're going to have additional runoff on a system that our stormwater system is already overburdened, as is our sewer systems. And I lived in a subdivision with flag lots in Eugene for about 6 years before I retired and moved up here to Sweet Home. And in that, it was not pleasant for most of the people that were in there, because there's a lot more noise, because it diminishes privacy, because you not only have cars out on the street, you also have cars going by the sides of your property. Thank you very much for your time. And
Thank you, Gary.
for the additional time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I must correct myself. I just measured again, and I apologize. 27th Avenue has a 40-foot right-of-way, not a 50-foot right-of-way. So this would not be as narrow as 27th.
So 10.
23rd,
27th.
27th has the same width right-of-way as 23rd has
Oh, okay.
for most of its length.
And also, commissioners, it is always a concern that you all bring up, but I would like to remind you that we do not have an on-street parking requirement here in Sweet Home. So it is not a requirement to require on-street parking. So just as a reminder of that.
All right, then I will invite Ron Walker back up.
Ron Walker, 2631 Foothills Drive.
Thank
you. Mr. Jarvis covered a good portion of my concerns. Apparently, I had some confusion about the width of the street. The thing I got in the mail, I think if you look on the left up there, it says curb to curb 30 feet. I have another map from SD 2101 that shows Foothills curb to curb is 60. So the way I read that is that's a pretty big bottleneck. If we are 50 feet wide as opposed to the 30, we still have a bottleneck, not as severe, but it's still there. And my background as 25 years in the fire service, I can tell you right now, when you have a bottleneck and you're going breakneck speed trying to get to save somebody, that's a hazard. Okay, so my biggest problem, I have several, but my biggest problem is access. You addressed the egress problem in 2101, so I'm happy with that. It was mentioned that the easements to the rear lots meet the fire code, and they probably do. However, have any of you driven a 40-foot fire engine and tried to back it into a 20-foot driveway when you're in a hurry and there's somebody's house is on fire and they're wondering why you're not there? I have. Trust me, that's not going to work. Previously, we had SD 2101, and I believe you folks approved a version of that after several meetings that had addressed all the concerns that have been stated tonight and many others. However, it only had 25 lots. The beauty of it is the easements were wider, and it gave your fire department and emergency vehicles half a chance to get to your resident. It was borderline. If you've ever, like I say, if you ever driven one of those things and tried to get them places, and there's any other cars around, you're in trouble. And there will be other cars. So I would like to see it go back to the 25 lots and have ample clearance for emergency vehicles, garbage trucks included, people with RVs and boats and stuff driving back there. I think that's my biggest concern with this thing. I think at this point we're trying to put too many houses in there and too many people and not enough good access and such for the future residents that to attract them to this area. I'm not against the development by any means. I think we need to develop in Sweet Home, but I think we need to control it and make it safe for everybody. And in this current plan, I just don't like those easements. It's a bad deal. I can live with the bottleneck of only 10 feet. Don't like it. But the easement thing, I think, is my primary thing. And I think I've said enough about that. Everybody else has addressed my other concerns, I think.
So your 3 minutes are up also.
Okay, good. I'm glad. Anyway, I think we got our point across. Thank you for your concern.
Thank you, Ron. And I believe Gail is no longer here. Gail, would you like to come up? All right. Do we have any other opponent testimony? All right, with that, I'll move on to neutral testimony. Any testimony from those that are neither in favor or in opposition to the application? After our opponent testimony, would our applicant like to come up for a rebuttal? Go ahead.
Ladies first.
Okay. Well, thank you again. So I'm hearing the testimony that's being stated tonight, and a lot of it revolves around these access easements to these rear parcels. So I just want to kind of point out a few codes and talk about how this is applied on the ground. So each of the lots, I can't read that far away, so let me pull out these lot numbers. Lots 21 through 29 will each have their separate driveway access. Those are shown in exhibit in the application submittal to have a 20-foot distance between any access easements. This allows for a parked car to be along the curbside. The lots 12 through 20 are proposed to be served by a 20-foot wide shared driveway. So that does allow for 2 travel lanes to occur coming in and out of the property at the same time. And it has a paved surface of 16 feet. So these standards all come from the Sweet Home Development Code. They comply with the transportation access codes, which are all reviewed to ensure that there is safe vehicle and pedestrian interface in a subdivision and within the community. So what's proposed here is compliant with the code, with the exception of there's just a few more lots proposed to be served by an access easement, which again, these lots that are proposed to be served and the lots in front of them are all oversized. The minimum area requirement for lots in this zone is just 7,000 square feet. And you can see by reading these, they're either 500 to 1,000 square feet greater than that. So these lots, while they do have some access easements and restrictions in some areas, do provide more than sufficient area within the zone for development of nice housing. Allows for circulation and traffic to easily maneuver on the lot as well as the adjacent streets.
So, well, Laura, I don't have anything else to add.
I think
All right.
with
Do we have any other additional questions?
Why easements and not flag?
the only item that comes up is that the flag area is deducted from the lot size.
And it would be significant to affect,
They would make
Those
the
front
lot
lots?
size non-conforming. So this
Okay.
is to reduce the number of deviations from the development code.
okay.
I guess I will add one more thing. So in the development code, if lots were just fronting a street and there was no access easements proposed, I will point out that the code does allow each site to have 2 driveways, and each of those driveways can be a total of 20 feet. So while there is, access providing to rear lots, it wouldn't be any different if lots were just fronting the public street and each of them were developed per the code with 2 driveways, each at 20 feet. So, either design is fitting and can be found throughout the community. This one just simply works better with the roadway alignment and dimensions of the site.
Joe has mentioned that sometimes you have to be good neighbors. So what, are you going to build into an HOA of some kind? Blacktop needs replacement and maintenance. And if you've got 2 homes off of 1 driveway, how are they going to resolve that 5 years down the line when it needs some crack seal and seal coat?
I think Jamie asked the same question earlier, and the response was there's mechanisms to make sure that the parties do participate. We haven't decided which one we're going to use, but most likely it'll be an access easement that has maintenance provisions spelled out in it, that each party is going to be responsible for a certain percentage of that maintenance on a day-to-day basis unless they physically cause the damage in any one particular incident, and then they'd be responsible for fixing that. That's the most common way of dealing with them.
And a prohibition against having a fence placed down that property line.
Down the middle of the
And
driveway.
yes,
Definitely have that provision in there.
okay, because that can happen.
I know.
Yeah.
I have never seen it finished, but I saw somebody start to do that because they weren't getting along. Or got stopped before the fence got.
Yeah.
I think that will conclude unless the commission has any additional questions.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Well, with that, I will close the public hearing. And we will open it up to the commission for discussion.
Joe,
What?
so the reason for not doing the flags is because it would create subsized lots in the front. What if we lost 1 lot in the front and made those bigger in the front? You're better with numbers. Could we do flags then?
Well, the flag requires 20 feet per.
Okay.
So if you have 2 flags in the back, that's a 40-foot section eaten out of the front 2 lots in order to serve the back 2 lots. By easement here, that takes 20 feet out of that distance. Otherwise, you'd end up with 40 feet. And that would be a property line as well. Right, 10 feet. And that flag is actually a property line as well. So that significantly negatively impacts the setbacks, which impacts the size and placement of the buildings as well.
But if they did easements the 3 easements
Hmm.
and then lost a front lot, just one, and then did a flag. Or maybe 2 flags.
Had more distance. Yeah, I did not have a chance to go back and look at what was proposed in the in 21. But I don't know. It would minimize the lots, lower the density of the neighborhood, increase the size of each lot, but they're still above
We'd still have
code
the
standard.
we'd still have the 3 easement.
Any
Yeah.
reduction
I mean, we could
you
even do a variance for an additional.
reduction that you do in the number of lots is going to reduce. Sorry. Any reduction you do in the number of lots is going to decrease the builder's profits.
Yeah,
And then you're
Yeah.
going to make it not profitable for them to make the whole development.
right.
Mhm.
That's a reason for being.
So I think that it's really the developer's responsibility to present us with options. And we can certainly consider options, but I'm not a developer.
Mhm. Yeah.
I really like Laura's comments about neighborhood and listening to the community responses in the past to situations similar to this. And I would not be in favor of an alternative development that substituted flag lots for 1 or 2 or 3 easement situations.
Yeah, flag lots do eat up. They eat up a lot of square footage. There were a few over on First Avenue many years ago, and it significantly took a big chunk out of each property, but that was the owner's request. This is still the owner's request. They're minimizing the impact on the land of each lot by doing it this way. Notwithstanding the fact that they overlap without having an easement on the back 9, but that's a different issue. The point is access. I mean, utilities are easy. They're pretty straightforward,
Access is my big concern.
Yeah.
For the plan itself. And I've expressed my concerns about the variance, and I am impressed by how well the developer can comply within our code. They have done such a great job, except for this piece. And it seems like they are hoping that we don't think it's very important, is what it feels like to me. And we changed it because it was important. It wasn't for us when we made that decision, so.
So it's also clear to me that the easement from lot 21 to 20 is necessary. That would be one that I would consider to be necessary because it allows us to put in utilities for the future. So there's one.
Yeah.
Yes, there were the property
And
requirements.
that could be expanded to have 4 lots access off of that one easement. And then the rest would have to require some other creative development considerations.
So you say the utility driven easement on 19, 20, 21, and 22 could be covering those, and then the 10% city required max would be one of the other locations.
That's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Without having to do a variance to do 30%.
To comply with our code, our city code.
I'd lean that way.
Well, we have 2 different decisions to make tonight. We have the variance decision and the development plan. So, which would you suggest we start? Because they both kind of,
The variance.
So the subdivision can't be approved without the variance. And so it would require that to move forward.
Right.
My recommendation for how to proceed would be that if you're leaning towards denying the applications as presented, I would recommend essentially communicating that to the applicant and then continuing this meeting to a later time to give them an opportunity to provide other options without reapplying.
You will need to do that for each application. So if you would like to continue it and have them come back with options for the future, you will need to do it both. You'll need to vote for the variance to do that and then separately for the subdivision to do that.
okay. Would they be able to bring back different options for us for the variance portion of it?
So the last time when this was approved in 21, there were a couple of options. Initially it was not received well, and it was continued to a later meeting where I believe two different options were presented, and ultimately one of those was selected. And so, I don't, that was a different applicant and a different engineering firm, and so I would not want to put words in their mouth. But that's certainly, there's a precedent for that's been done in the past.
So,
Do we need to open the public hearing and ask them if they would like to have a postponement or?
If you would like to reopen the public hearing and bring the applicant back to discuss that further, that would be appropriate.
we're still in discussion.
Right. I'm not
Yes.
telling you what to do, but that's an option for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Good to know our options.
I would like to offer some thoughts in our discussion meeting. First of all, I think they've done an amazing job of designing some of this. I still do not like to see Foothills Drive wide and then narrow because a lot of traffic is going to be coming west, no matter what we do. I have observed, and we all do that. As we drive around, we see what's happening now in other communities. And I've seen other communities where the beauty strip is not there. And, you know, we can say, well, it's wonderful to have it, but if you park parallel and let your wife out, she's on wet grass, or she can be on concrete. Not to say anything about the fact that a lot of these are just not well maintained. It would give you an additional 6 feet on each side of the road. We have enough roads in Sweet Home already. Thanks, Blair. We have enough roads in Sweet Home already where you have to pull over and wait for another car to pass. And I think that would be something that would possibly happen here. I would like to also see the city, see if they could participate on seeing that 23rd is brought up to as high a standard as we can do it.
And that will happen.
You what?
That is happening.
Okay.
I spoke with the property owner earlier this week about the needed right of way, and hopefully we can come to an agreement.
Now, that's just my opinion, and I'm just throwing it out for everybody to think about. And if you disagree with me, that's all right. I'll still like y'all.
Do we have any other discussions before we invite the applicant back up? All right, I'm going to reopen the public hearing for both VR 24 and SD, where are we? SD 24-01, and invite the applicant back up.
Chair Wood, will you make sure to say the times
Oh,
when you
yes.
open and
I'm
close? Thank you.
sorry. We're reopening at 8:47.
So thank you again, Laura LaRock. So we are, based on the testimony that we've received this evening and discussion that's being held, would like to request a continuance to the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting for the ability to produce and review plans and come back and present.
Okay.
The next regularly scheduled one is actually next week.
Oh,
A week from tonight.
This was a regular
This one was postponed, and so it threw off our schedule. So
that's right.
just wanted to
Thank you.
clarify, your
It was
option
like
would either
30
be
days.
next week or it would be the first meeting in
So
September,
September 5th.
September 5th.
which is a little less than 30 days for you.
Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you. Lauren.
just making sure.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and then just the record open. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you. All right. Again, I will close the public hearing at 8:48. All right. Well, our applicant has requested a continuance. Do we have, we'll start with VR 24-01. Do we have any additional discussion? Does anyone have a motion?
I would make a motion to continue VR 24-01 to our next scheduled meeting. No, to September 5th, 2024.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Then that motion passes.
I would make a motion to continue SD 24-01 to September 5th, 2024.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Then the motion passes. Okay, we've moved past our regular. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for your testimony and your time. All right, then we will go over the staff. What do you have for us today?
Welcome back. Haven't seen you guys since March.
You
What's
missed
that
us.
about?
We just didn't have any business, so apologize for that.
Giving us the summer off.
Yeah.
I was just going to talk about transitions.
Yeah, what, a couple projects that are still ongoing. The transportation system plan is still ongoing. We had a meeting in, you were at the meeting, Joe? We had a meeting last in June, I believe, and we are hoping that that can get wrapped up by the end of the year, but I'm not sure if it will be. We're also working through our housing production strategy. That is moving forward. We had a couple of good roundtable meetings with some folks from the community and got some great information. I think there'll be some really interesting recommendations coming out of that. And we are hoping that that will involve a meeting with all of you, with the consultants presenting their findings and the community feedback that they've received, and providing some recommendations on adjustments that the city can make to promote housing within the community. And I think we're talking about a possible joint workshop with the Planning Commission and the City Council on that topic. Our Parks Master Plan continues to move forward also. We have a pretty much I guess, a final draft to be considered, and we are aiming for, is that going to be the September 5th public hearing? Well, it'll involve, because the Parks Master Plan, we're aiming to adopt it as an appendix to the comprehensive plan. And so that means it will come before you as essentially a legislative amendment, and have a public hearing before all of you. And then your recommendation, whether to adopt or not, would then be passed on to the City Council, and the City Council would have a public hearing on it as well. And if all moves forward, we'd have it officially adopted as a part of our comprehensive plan.
It's not showing.
I-
Whoops, I went too far.
It'll be, I know it'll be September. I just
think
couldn't
it's
remember if it was the
September
5th or the.
19th, I think.
So those are the main planning
September
projects.
19th.
September 19th is when that'll happen. So those are the main planning projects going on, and we're hoping that a couple of them actually are getting towards the end because I've been working on them for a while.
You mentioned a couple grants.
Grants. Did I?
Street improvement, maybe?
No.
So we've applied for a Safe Routes to School grant for
Oh,
Mountain
yeah.
View Road.
Good.
Those are really competitive.
They are.
I don't know if we'll be able to get it. At the same time, we also applied for what they're referring to as a carbon reduction grant, and that's through a state program. And we've applied for the same exact project with that program. Only instead of focusing on the safety of children, we're focusing on the reduction of vehicle trips that would be involved to the junior high school because of more kids walking to school if it's safe to walk. So I just had a meeting with someone on that, and that one looks more promising. I haven't had any final indication yet, but even if we do get that one, it would probably be reduced in scope. So we wouldn't be able to do we wouldn't be able to do as much of Mountain View as we would like. We applied for the entire length from Ames Creek Road to Long Street, and that's 0.6 miles. It'd be a $2 or $3 million project, and it's looking like if we could get just between the junior high and Ames Creek or something like that, that would dramatically improve things. Like to get as much of that done as possible. We'll see.
And we get an introduction to our new commissioner sitting at the table with us.
Oh, yeah.
Who is that?
Joe, we never introduced
He
you.
was talking down there.
Sorry, a lot of times I assume that just because I know somebody, everybody else does. But,
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
so yeah, we haven't had a meeting, but pretty soon after our last meeting, Joe Grable was appointed as a planning commissioner.
Yay. What a
You know,
great addition.
Joe's a
It's like, Joe,
Yes,
Is
we are.
what's
this an
your
increase in
opinion?
salary?
no,
count on him.
Joe does not get a salary from the city anymore.
No, I know he's retired.
Yeah.
Yeah. He, that's his pay.
No, we tried to talk him into doing this along. We
Really?
bugged him and bugged him and said,
Thank
you're
you.
retired now.
Well,
You
we're
need to
glad
join
it
a
worked.
committee. So-
Here's an application. I've already filled it out. Just sign it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I don't know that it wasn't quite that, but
It wasn't quite.
it was close.
No. But I do feel pretty passionate about some of these things. and,
Yay.
Like I said, the way cul-de-sacs are made in the typical fashion are boring, functional, and boring.
Oceans of asphalt.
They
Oceans
are.
of asphalt, and there are
Wasted space.
alternatives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recommend that all of you take a drive up to Strawberry Ridge and drive around the cul-de-sac there,
Yeah.
designed by Mr. Joe Grable. And the great thing about that is not only is it not an ocean of asphalt, it's a circle that is fully compliant with the fire district's needs, but the interior of it is used as a detention basin essentially to handle stormwater. So it's a extremely efficient use of land, and I would love it if tonight's applicants took a look and put a
Wow.
couple of those in.
Yeah.
To look at a
Um,
couple of things in
wow.
a few years, you know, they
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
didn't quite do much.
It's the dollar.
It's efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed some people have new name tags in front of them.
Well,
Like staff.
Oh, here, staff?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've had some changes in personnel. And so Angela is now the planning and building manager.
Two stuck
And-
with me again.
Yeah, you get to, and we're very grateful for her expertise.
Yep.
And yeah, we've had a few changes. We have a new interim city manager. Chief Ogden is taking on that role, and
Yeah.
we're very excited about that. So things are
And Cecily's the
assistant city manager.
assistant city
Yeah.
manager.
So, who do I report to? I think I report to Cecily now.
oh. Department head,
Your new guidelines seem to indicate that we should confirm more with you before this meeting when we have questions.
Yes, so that's why
Yes.
we put out your staff report and packet a week before. So when you have questions, it is helpful to us when you have questions. It gives us time to research before we get here at the meeting. A lot of times, I mean, obviously we all have our laptops, but sometimes we can't answer things without having
Yeah.
to be able to look them up. So it is very helpful for you to, any questions you have to get us ahead of time.
Yeah. It's mainly just to make sure that we actually have an answer for you at the meeting itself.
And
Um,
it'll keep us from having to continue it because we don't have the information too. So it is very helpful.
I
You're
noticed,
willing.
Thanks. First time down.
I noticed
great
in your
job.
reports that everywhere that you said, and.
Turn your
or-
mic.
Oh, yeah. In the reports that everywhere where you said and or duplexes, it's highlighted in italics, not just standard text. And I thought to myself, yeah, that's going to need to be mentioned just about every time, because some R1 standard subdivision isn't going to be a R1 standard subdivision if the owner doesn't want to.
Well, it's in italics because when the original staff report I wrote, I didn't put that in there and I had forgotten the italic was the revised portion of it.
Okay.
So when I sent you out the email, I said, you know, anything that was stricken or was italicized was the revision part that I did because I have been told that that commissioners don't like it when I revise it and they don't know what part I revised. So,
True.
so I made it
Yeah.
so there was a
That makes sense.
a little bit of a difference this time so you would know what parts I revised this time. So hopefully that helped.
Yep.
So.
I have a question. Is there any applicant in the wings for our vacancy? Somebody who wanted to come, but
I'll be
I
honest,
haven't talked
I
to
only
Seth
learned
really
that there was a
recently.
vacancy probably 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. There was one person we had talked to, but I don't know if they actually submitted an application or not. Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Do we need
Yeah.
to bug them?
what's that?
Do we need to bug that person?
Who was it?
And have you all met Adam? Adam Norman is now having to help us with our meetings because all of the technology is back there and Blair and I can't drag it up here now. So
Well,
So,
I haven't
welcome
been
to the
trained yet
crew.
either. So I could have sat back there.
Right.
I think that's it. Really it
All
for
right.
staff
Well, then
updates.
let's
Anything
go
else?
ahead and close this meeting at 9:01.
All right.
Whew.
Well, when you don't meet for 3 months.
No, we got to talk for a little while.
Good job, Laura.
And Laura?